Know that many Christians regard the Old Testament as the foundation and the New as the superstructure, and while many admit that there are faults and mistakes in the Old Testament, they insist that the New is the flower and perfect fruit. I admit that there are many good things in the New Testament, and if we take from that book the dogmas of eternal pain, of infinite revenge, of the atonement, of human sacrifice, of the necessity of shedding blood, if we throw away the doctrine of non-resistance, of loving enemies, the idea that prosperity is the result of wickedness, that poverty is a preparation for paradise, if we throw all these away and take the good, sensible passages applicable to conduct, then we can make a fairly good moral guide. Narrow, but moral. Of course, many important things will be left out. You would have nothing about human rights, nothing in favour of the family, nothing for education, nothing for investigation, for thought and reason. But still you would have a fairly good moral guide. On the other hand, if you would take the foolish passages, the extreme ones, you could make a creed that would satisfy an insane asylum. If you take the cruel passages, the verses that inculcate eternal hatred, verses that writhe and hiss like serpents, you can make a creed that would shock the heart of a hyena. It may be that no book contains better passages than the New Testament, but certainly no book contains worse. Below the blossom of love, you find the thorn of hatred. On the lips that kiss, you find the poison of the cobra. The Bible is not a moral guide. Any man who follows faithfully all its teachings is an enemy of society and will probably end his days in a prison or an asylum. What is morality? In this world we need certain things. We have many wants. We are exposed to many dangers. We need food, fuel, raiment and shelter. And besides these wants, there is what may be called the hunger of the mind. We are conditioned beings, and our happiness depends on conditions. There are certain things that diminish, certain things that increase well-being. There are certain things that destroy, and there are others that preserve. Happiness, including its highest forms, is after all the only good, and everything, the result of which is to produce or secure happiness, is good, that is to say, moral. Everything that destroys or diminishes well-being is bad, that is to say, immoral. In other words, all that is good is moral, and all that is bad is immoral. What then is, or can be called, a moral guide? The shortest possible answer is one word: intelligence. We want the experience of mankind, the true history of the race. We want the history of intellectual development, of the growth of the ethical, of the idea of justice, of conscience, of charity, of self-denial. We want to know the paths and roads that have been travelled by the human mind. These facts in general, these histories in outline, the results reached, the conclusions formed, the principles evolved, taken together, would form the best conceivable moral guide. We cannot depend on what are called inspired books, or the religions of the world. These religions are based on the supernatural, and according to them, we are under obligation to worship and obey some supernatural being or beings. All these religions are inconsistent with intellectual liberty. They are the enemies of thought, of investigation, of mental honesty. They destroy the manliness of man. They promise eternal rewards for belief, for credulity, for what they call faith. These religions teach the slave virtues. They make inanimate things holy and falsehoods sacred. They create artificial crimes. To eat meat on Friday, to enjoy yourself on Sunday, to eat on fast days, to be happy in Lent, to dispute a priest, to ask for evidence, to deny a creed, to express your sincere thought. All these acts are sins, crimes against some God. To give your honest opinion about Jehovah, Mohammed, or Christ is far worse than to maliciously slander your neighbour. To question or doubt miracles is far worse than to deny known facts. Only the obedient, the credulous, the cringers, the kneelers, the meek, the unquestioning, the true believers are regarded as moral, as virtuous. It is not enough to be honest, generous and useful, not enough to be governed by evidence, by facts. In addition to this, you must believe. These things are the foes of morality. They subvert all natural conceptions of virtue. All inspired books, teaching that what the supernatural commands is right, and right because commanded, and that what the supernatural prohibits is wrong, and wrong because prohibited, are absurdly unphilosophic. and all inspired books teaching that only those who obey the commands of the supernatural are, or can be, truly virtuous, and that unquestioning faith will be rewarded with eternal joy, are grossly immoral. Again I say, intelligence is the only moral guide.